Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Gratuity. I'm your host, Darin. Thank you to everyone who's gotten in touch about the show. We really appreciate the kind words and the support. If you have a story to share or just want to reach out, please email us at gratuity@tastemade.com. I'm so excited to have one of my good friends, one of the people who I love talking to about with food, Anthony Falco, aka the International Pizza Czar, on today's episode. We talk about how he noticed the different shift through his work of how people have been responding to the pandemic. We talk about the global supply chain, and then he also gives us a great, I'm telling you, tips I'm going to use on how to make and sustain a sourdough starter at home. So thank you, Anthony, and please sit back and enjoy some gratuity. Anthony, thank you so much for joining us on Gratuity, coming to us live from your 80s aspirational living room.
We're very lucky. We're very fortunate in a lot of ways, that we have a pretty spacious apartment in Brooklyn, but we don't have any windows to the outside or an outdoor space. We just have skylights.
As an international pizza czar, pizza consultant, when did you first start to notice the global effect of the pandemic? And what were you seeing because your business causes you to be in touch with so many different parts of the world?
So I think that when I first saw it, when I thought it was, something that you just kind of read in the side of the news or just a small blurb here and there. But I was traveling. I was actually in Italy a month and a half ago, and it was just sometime in mid-February, and I was coming, and I had earlier been in France, and I had then flown from Paris to Milan, and then from Milan to Palermo. Everything was pretty normal. Spent like 5 days in Sicily. It was really fantastic and beautiful and pretty normal. And then I was flying to Rome. I took 4 days in Rome. And when I landed in Rome, everyone had to walk through this kind of gauntlet of Red Cross people wearing head to toe kind of things with masks. And they had iPads and they were scanning people for temperature. But at the same time, I saw it and I was like, oh, wow, that's crazy. And I when it came to me to walk past and I was like, do you need to scan? She's like, no, you're fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. Come on, just everything's fine. Other than that, it was pretty normal. I mean, you see there's troops on the street always in Rome, just around the key tourist sites, but no one was wearing masks. But that moment in the Rome airport, I was like, well, this is maybe something. This is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you were in Italy, in the south of Italy, in Sicily, right when everything was starting to develop. How have you seen or heard from any of your friends in those regions? What have you been hearing from your people on the ground and what life is like right now?
Just to backtrack before that, I also just remembered that right in January, I had a few inquiries from China. And one of them was someone in Beijing, and I had a FaceTime call in, I think it was late January, with this guy in China, and he was like, this is my concept, and we talked about it. And then he was at the end of the call, he's like, well, all right, I'll be in touch. I don't know if it's in the news in the United States, but there's this like virus thing.
Sure.
Probably going to blow over in a couple weeks, And I was
not so much.
I was like, oh, okay. But yeah, I've been in touch with a lot of people. I've been in touch with my friends in Italy and my cousin who lives in Rome, who's a medical student. And she is, she's very informed. And, it was scary because it was right before things really started becoming serious here in the United States. And I was like, how are you? What's going on? Italy seems like it's, and she was like, it's not what we thought. It's not the flu. It's very different. And, that's kind of a scary statement. And she's like, it's very bad. And they were graduating nurses early and doctors early. And
I heard
so far, as far as like my clients and other friends around the world, it's been a pretty interesting kind of mixed bag for pizza. Pizza is known as being, recession proof and one of the most, resilient segments of the restaurant industry and food industry. And it seems to be a lot of feedback I'm getting is showing that that's still the case. I know some restaurants are busier than they've ever been before, selling out. Some have not really made much of a transition to takeout and delivery, and the ones that had bowed out are getting in touch with me. I think a lot of people are concerned with liability. I think the people who really are doing delivery well are really concerned about contactless delivery of the product. Pickup is, I think, very popular as compared to delivery, because people feel more in control as opposed to having a stranger come in.
Yeah.
I've seen quite a few people using their capacity and trying to keep people busy, and to also try to make money producing large volumes of frozen pizza. And some people, I've seen are doing very well. Lamora in Los Angeles is killing it.
Love them. Shout out to Lamora.
They're great people. Known them for a very long time, and just big fans of what they do. They're smart, hustling people, and they kind of transitioned into that. And by all accounts, they're doing great. My client in Toronto is about to roll out frozen pizzas. My friend Brian Spangler in Portland, which I don't know if you've been there or Brian, but
yes.
He's probably just the most the smartest guy in pizza as far as being a technical bread guy. He's he's brilliant. It's I think it's maybe the best pizza in the United States. I mean, it's up there. If it's in the top 5, if it's not number 1, he's just cranking pizzas out. He's super busy. And then here in New York City, I'm extremely proud of the work that my client Adam Elzer is doing with sauce. They very early on started a program where if you buy a pizza, if you donate, you can go on their website, buy a pizza for pickup. You don't pick it up, it gets donated to a hospital, and they donate one also. So they match it. And at this point, they have 3 locations in Manhattan, and they are at full capacity, and they've delivered to this day 4,000 plus pizzas to frontline healthcare workers. They just expanded to the Javits Center in partnership with my other client, Upside Pizza. You can go to Upside's Instagram, and they have a GoFundMe, or you can go to Sauce's Instagram, and they have links to donate there. That's something where small businesses that need to stay open or have decided to stay open, you can help them, and you can also help frontline medical workers, because they're not sleeping. They're not cooking meals for themselves. They need food, and pizza makes people happy. So, it's a win-win.
What is it about pizza and delivering that makes it both something that people are leaning into, maybe from both the comfort point of view, but also maybe from a safer, easier food to type of eat?
It's comfort. It for sure. It's nostalgia. I think pizza also is one of those things that it's got a wide appeal. From a personal perspective and a history, one of the things that I always loved about pizza is I was raised vegetarian. And then when I was young, it's kind of why are you vegetarian? I don't know why I'm a vegetarian. Why is anything?
I don't know. My parents.
Just the way, exactly. My parents. Pizza was one of those things where everyone can sit around, they can eat some cheese pizza, and it's I'm normal. It's not a veggie burger or a veggie hot dog, or it's cheese pizza. That is the default version of pizza. It's already vegetarian. If you go to Neapolitan pizza and marinara pizza is default vegan, it's pretty much open to everyone. The other thing I think is that it's not the first thing that you're going to cook at home if you don't know how to cook anything.
It's still a luxury.
Yeah, for sure. It's really something that you're I could eat. I'm going to make pasta for myself,
right?
Or I'm going to make a sandwich, if you're a base level cook, that's what you're going to eat, do a lot of. So I think pizza is one of those things where it's all right, I don't feel like cooking. This is not something I normally cook for myself on a day-to-day basis. I'm going to order a pizza. So yeah, I mean, I think and you see that's part of why it's recession proof. I think it's got a perception of value. If you really want to feed a lot of people for easily without a lot of cleanup and kind of just effort, pizza's, perfect for that.
What have you seen as a shift of this transference of ideas? How are people still communicating and sharing and working together on a global level? If not just with pizza, but with business ideas, collaborations, how are you seeing maybe some of the things where people are not being able to share as much, and then maybe some of the good stuff where people sharing or even more?
There's two areas that I see this happening in. One area is my commercial clients and the people, and who have businesses, who are making pizza, who are my friends, and then my commercial clients. People reach out to me and know that I have experience with frozen pizza, and they say, hey, what vacuum sealer do you like? Or, what's the best way to freeze it? All that. So, we've been exchanging and sharing ideas that way. Tips for how to transition into more delivery. With Adam's thing, he came to me very early on with this idea, and I just used my platform to promote it and to talk to other like pizzeria owners to get on board with this program. And then I think Slice Out Hunger did something then similar to that. So I think the pizza community was already kind of worked together a lot, and so I'm continuing to do that. I'm thinking of like just doing like a group questionnaire for my clients so they can kind of share what's working with them and what's not working.
That's incredible.
On the other side of it is the home cook, and so I'm getting tons of inquiries through my Instagram from people who are making pizza at home. And so I'm almost just about finished with the manuscript to my cookbook I've been working for 2 years on.
Can't wait to see it. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's coming out with Abrams, and I'm super excited to work with them, and we're pushing forward. It's going to be fun. But I've been testing those recipes in this time that I'm at home, and then I've been sharing a lot of that information on my Instagram. I don't know if that's the best idea to share my recipes out there, but it's what came to me during this time, and a lot of people have been using them. And so I've been keeping the recipes in my story highlights so people can refer back to those. And so that's been something that I've seen, just this explosion of people cooking pizza at home, and specifically people are very interested in sourdough baking and sourdough pizza. People are staring down the barrel of time, and they're looking at like, well, what is something that normally takes a lot of time, that normally I have to be around at home for? And they're like, I'm going to start a sourdough, or I'm going to start, borrow a sourdough and start trying to do it,
Guilty. I mean, guilty right here as well. Weeks ago, I would have never thought of diving in, and now it's just a great side project. And also, it's very easy to get lost in the success and failures of something that's very small like that. And if it's successful, then everything else sort of melts away for a little bit. And if it fails, you go like, how do I problem solve this? Because it's a form of control. It's a form of, I can work with this. I can't maybe solve the pandemic, but I can maybe make this dough rise.
Yeah, it's the Tamagotchi for millennials and Zoomers right now.
There we go. I think, even though you are sharing your ideas, and maybe that's not the best thing, I think people will look back on this time and look at the people who stepped up in sharing their knowledge, like stepped up in providing a place for people to put that energy when you're at home, when you got nothing to do. And have there been any stories that people have shared with you who've been following your Instagram stories, that anyone reached out and been like, thank you so much for this? What have you seen from your Instagram community?
I think just yesterday was a really, just like a touching story for me from Iran. And it's a guy Iran has been hit very hard.
Yeah.
And a guy reached out to me, and he has a restaurant, and he's like, I've always wanted to learn pizza. I've always wanted to do pizza. I've got this, like, my restaurants, there's no business here. I think that if I can do pizza, that might be something good for me to do with my restaurant. He's like, do you have any recipes? And I was just like, here it is. Here's the whole thing. Here's everything. Amazing. Just sent him, this document with like one recipe, one basic dough recipe. And he sent me a picture, and he posted it on Instagram yesterday. And he's like, I finally did it. It came out great. I mean, it looked great, actually. It's always nice to share your recipes with chefs who already kind of know what they're doing.
Yeah. And aren't pointing a finger at you being like, this didn't work. Your recipe might be wrong. It's like, have you been in the kitchen before? It's like, well, no. It's like, okay.
I mean, it was great. And it's like, I think it would be really cool to connect with him someday. But as far as home bakers all over, a guy in Greece converted my recipe to Greek and then posted it on Instagram, which is pretty cool.
Amazing.
A lot of people in South America, I have a bunch of Brazilian followers. We've lost so much in the global world. And as a person who traveled for a living. I was supposed to go to Australia for the first time. It got canceled. I was supposed to go to Mongolia for the first time. It got canceled. I was supposed to go back to India and help open this restaurant. It's ready to open, and that's on hold. So I've lost a lot, and we all have in the ability to move around and travel right now. But I think we are connected still. People are very excited about the butter crust recipe drop.
Yes, the butter crust is going to be amazing. And I feel like I'd be remiss not to have you here and not ask you some tips for people who might be watching. Let's go back to the sourdough real quick, okay? Let's talk about a starter. Just give us the basic tips of starting and keeping a starter alive if I've never done it before.
Start by kind of like defining the terms here. Like, I call my starter, also known as a sourdough. Technically, it would be known as a levain. That's the kind of the first thing I think people need to know is like, how do you navigate the language?
Sure.
Then there's pulish and biga, and those are all pre-ferments. The idea, though, basically is that you're taking a portion of flour and water and you're cultivating either just yeast, which would be the bigas and the pulish with the commercial yeast, or you're doing it the way it was done for the last 10,000 years, which is all natural. And that is a combination of bacteria and yeast. And that's the big difference between doing like a biga or Polish commercial pre-ferment versus an all-natural pre-ferment or sourdough or levain pre-ferment. So, and what's really important is that it's actually 100-to-1 bacteria to yeast. So the bacterial element is super duper important, and that is lactobacilli. That's the good bacteria that comes from our hands and just all around us, and it's how you ferment, yogurt and like kimchi, and every culture in the world is fermenting food for flavor, for nutrition, and for fun. Sourdough is a fermented, turns your bread into a fermented food, and then it's going to give you a depth of flavor you can't get with just commercial yeast.
You cannot.
And it's going to break down the starch more fully. There's definitely some debate out there as to whether it's better for you or what, is anything, who knows anything really. I use it because I think it tastes better. So I literally cannot be wrong about that, because that's my opinion.
That's your opinion.
Exactly. And then I do it because I think it's more fun and it's just more interesting.
It is.
To have this thing that I've had for years, and it's an endless supply as long as I have flour and water to make bread with, I think it's important if you're starting to know all those things and just do some quick reading. And then the other thing is, I think it's great to try and make your own from scratch. But I think really the best thing to do is try and borrow a piece from someone, which is tricky in these times. If someone gives you a starter that's stable and well functioning and you can keep it alive, you're going to know what it smells like, because that's a big part of how your tool set to make sure it's working is by smell. It lets you know something good. Is it bad? Is it ready to use yet? Is it needs to be fed? Your nose is going to tell you so many things. And so if you can use one that's already working well, how are you going to know? If you don't know anything, how are you going to know if you did it right in the first place when you're starting one from scratch? My personal belief is that the yeast and the bugs that want to be on wheat are already on wheat. So like using grapes or yogurt or pineapple juice or all that stuff, it just like, I don't mess around with that.
I saw some pineapple juice ones. I was like, I'm good.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I get the theory behind that. The theory is that, the wild yeast, when you have a stable sourdough, the lactobacilli is producing a ton of acid, and that acidic environment is going to stave off all the bad bugs. The only kind of yeast that can survive is this specific wild yeasts. There's a variety of them, but one of these wild yeast is going to land in there or be in there already and is going to thrive because it's adapted to live in a highly acidic environment and work symbiotically, which we still I don't think fully understand the science of how the bacteria and the yeast work together, how they talk, how they, do things that are helping each other, but not in their own self-interest. It seems like those things, the right things should all exist already just on the wheat. So I think the best way to start a starter is to take freshly milled organic whole grains, start with them, and then start adding in more kind of sifted flour or all-purpose flour or something like that. The bacteria, I'm pretty sure, mostly comes from you. So it's important to kind of mix with your hand first. I usually mix mine starter always with a spoon because I just don't want to get my hands sticky all the time. But like, it's a stable colony, and that's the thing. It doesn't need my hand.
Doesn't need your hand. Doesn't need your hand.
Yeah, it doesn't need it. Yeah, but that initial phase, you know, I think that's one of the things. So it's a wild ride though, because you're going to be, when you're using your nose, you're smelling it, and what you're doing is your nose is telling you kind of who's in there and who's winning and who's losing. You know?
What's a losing smell? Because everyone sort of knows what a winning smell is, which is like bakery, fresh bread. You know that smell. What does a losing starter smell like?
There's a type of bacteria that's in your stomach, and so it tends to be like all around your house and in your things. And I believe it's Clostridarium. I would have to look that up, but real quick. But I'm pretty sure that's what it is. But anyways, it smells like vomit.
Gross.
So yeah.
So you know, so there isn't really a middle ground. Like you sort of know if you're winning or if you're losing just by the way it smells.
Clostridium. Yeah, it's in your stomach, and if it gets in there, it's like it's gonna smell. It's in your intestine, and it's gonna make it stink. Smell like your vomit, because when you vomit, that's what it is. So like when I did my starter from freshly milled whole wheat, it bubbled instantly. That's the thing. It's like not instantly, but the next day it was bubbling. And I was like, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. But it didn't smell right. It just kind of smelled like wet flour. And I was like, okay, so I kept feeding it. And what I did, I think is helpful, is I kept it at 80 degrees. I have a dehydrator, and it goes as low as 80 degrees, and I would keep it in there overnight. And I'd take it out and put it with a loose lid during the day in my apartment. I had a feeding regimen, where you start with it's wetter, and then you kind of slowly move your way towards more frequent and more to 1-to-1 ratio of starter, flour, and water, and then more towards like a all-purpose flour. But this one, I've only ever fed organic whole grains flour. It's like my special starter B. I have starter A and starter B, or Starty B. And so Starty B was, didn't smell like anything. And then it was like kind of smelled like, okay, now it's just like kind of like a little funky. And then it was really kind of smelled like kind of baby diaper. And then it smelled like baby vomit. And then it smelled like adult vomit. And then it smelled like really kind of like diarrhea, and at that point, Bex was like, dude, throw that away. It's disgusting.
Every time
you open the toaster oven, it stinks. And she's like, get it out. And I was like, it's just, we're in a bad place. We're going to get over this hump. It's going to be fine. And I'm like, should I put pineapple juice in there? No, they didn't have pineapple juice in Stone Age Turkey. I'm powering through. And so then it started to smell like blue cheese. And I was like, okay, so blue cheese, there's like a bacteria on your foot. And so foot smelling cheese, it smells that way because there's a bacteria on your foot, and it's like, it's a good one, I guess. People like blue cheese. They like stinky cheese. So we were starting to get better, and then it went to Parmesan, and I was like, okay, all right, now we're really kind of in the home stretch. And then it really started kind of getting a nutty smell to it. And nice. So that kind of like, in the background of Parmesan, there's kind of a funky but then nutty. Then we broke through into at the same time it really started to peak and like really get a lot of volume. It also started smelling yeasty and kind of like fresh bread. I made waffles with it this morning, and it was amazing.
I mean, I think that's one of the things that people are thinking about as well, is because flour's in short supply in some places, and every time I know that I feed my starter, I'm thinking about like, how much can I be feeding this, because I don't know how much flour I can get. And so it's that balance, but also like persevering. You don't want to give up on something. And also for maybe the mental aspect of like, we're going to get through this. We're going to make this starter work, but also for conservation of flour.
I try to never throw starter away. So that's why it's important to have like a good discard recipe. And for me, it's waffles. I will feed, and then I'll have like, it'll grow into multiple containers. If I have to use it, it's either going to go into a pizza dough recipe, a bread recipe, or it's going to go into a waffle recipe. I will save it and put it in the fridge and just kind of bank it. And then I do an overnight where I just dump it into a bowl with buttermilk and flour and starter. and then wrap it in a bowl, and then the next morning it blows up and you make waffles, and it's delicious.
Will you send us that recipe?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
Okay. All right. We'll post it up. I know there's so much more that we can talk about, and we can talk about pizzas and everything to the end of days and things and like that. But I want to make sure we get enough time to start to look about the future and what does this mean for someone like yourself, but also in general. Like, do you see a silver lining here? Like, do you see more people getting into baking, more people understanding like what it really takes to make pizza? As they do something like the butter crust recipe that you've provided at home, do people start not taking fresh baked bread, fresh baked pizza, baked goods at all for granted?
Yeah, I mean, I would hope that, the general public would get a better idea of the value of good bread. Inside the industry, pizza is one of those things where you can actually do well and you can make money. Having a bakery is known as one of those things where it's going to be really tough to make money.
Yeah.
And the reason is there's a lot of kind of automated kind of factory bread out there, and that when you're buying in pallets of flour, it's just really hard to compete when you do things by hand. And so when everyone is kind of trying to do it on that small scale by hand, hopefully they'll see the value in people who do it that way. And then also they'll see the benefit of natural fermentation, better flour, on the way you feel and just the flavor you get. And that those businesses, people who are doing that way, will be supported. The other thing is, I think, the importance of regional food systems and domestic manufacturing and production. I've got, products that I really like, people who make pans, people who make ovens in the United States, people who build things here, refrigerators that I like, brands that I like that are made in the United States, people who care about manufacturing things in the United States. I think that's super important. And regional food production and food systems. 100 years ago, there was 150,000 mills in the United States.
Wow.
When people were settling the West and essentially this whole country, people of European descent would always kind of start a mill, so that they had access to fresh flour. Yep. Because before roller mills and white flour patent milling was invented, when you stone mill flour and it's got most of the wheat and the germ and it's whole grains, it goes bad quickly. I think a lot of people think of flour as something you buy a bag of, you put it in your pantry and you freeze it, and it's just flour. It lasts forever. That's white flour, and that bleached flour, whole milled, whole grain, freshly milled, stone milled flour, has a very short shelf life. So there used to be lots and lots and lots of small mills that would serve small communities. And a miller, was someone who had a connection with the farmer and the baker. And it's this triangle. It's the farmer, the miller, the baker. And that's the food system. That's it. That's a regional food system. And it's a foundation. Today, there's 150 or under 200 mills in the United States. From 150,000 to less than 200 in 100 years.
That's crazy.
And so all of the milling has been centralized to the Midwest, and it's these giant milling operations. And then they want something that's going to be consistent. So they tell all the growers, only grow these 7 grains. These are the only ones that we use, and we're going to blend them, and we'll take some of yours, and we'll take some of Joe's, and we'll take some of Bill's and Cheryl's, and we'll blend it all up together. So not only did we lose the diversity of millers, we lost the diversity of regional grains. So
got it.
As a consultant, I always considered, before this happened, I always considered myself to be a third way in the pizza world. That you have the first international pizza was American commercial pizza, Pizza Hut, Domino's, Papa John's, they're all over the world. And then Italy kind of woke up to the whole thing and was like, hey, wait a second, we started this whole thing. And so the EPN, and that's the Neapolitan Verace Pizza Napolitana. That's the second wave of international pizza, and they started opening those all over the world. And they both have the same goal. They want to have, whether you're in Bangalore, Bangkok, or Bangor, Maine, they want you to have the same pizza everywhere and be the same ingredients, and they have a global food chain to provide that. I consider myself to be the third way of international pizza, where everywhere I go, it's something completely different. I worked in Lisbon on a place called Lupita, and it's probably one of my favorite projects I've worked on in a really long time. Super, super talented chef there named Duda. He's Brazilian. He moved to Lisbon, to Portugal, and he opened this very small place. It's one of those places where, I showed him what I knew, and then he took it to a whole nother level. And the pizzas are amazing. But I landed, and the first thing we did was we went to this miller who is like a whatever 8th generation, like there's a 300-year-old windmill where next to where he has a modern stone mill with robots. He showed us all his flour. He showed us the history of the mill. He showed us how the windmill worked and the importance of the miller and the farmer and the baker and that triangle. And we're buying flour from him, creating these, really functioning regional food systems. When something like this happens, it's more durable, when you're relying on these really huge extended food chains, things start to break down, borders start to close. It's really important to have these regional food systems.
Well, listen, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to talk with us. If people want to follow you or check out what you're doing or keep up with info on the book, where can they go?
You can always go to my Instagram. It's Millennium_Falco. So that's 2 L's and 2 N's. My website's piz.za.com. It's got a little information about my pizza consulting, some of my clients. Pretty much Instagram is the best way to see what I'm up to. And, people will DM me all the time and ask questions, and I try to answer all of them and help people who are trying to make pizza at home right now. A lot of people have been sending me pictures of their final products, and I'm reposting them, and everybody's got to kind of adapt. And, it's been very challenging, but trying to make it work.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, man. I can't wait to eat pizza with you soon. Stay safe and keep. I might be bugging you for sourdough starter tips sooner than you think.
Yeah, no, I got you. We'll figure it out. I mean, it's all in the nose.
I got you, bud. All right. Thank you so much, man. Stay safe.
All right. Take care.
Anthony, thank you so much for sharing all of your tips with us. I'm going to go smell my sourdough starter as soon as this ends, and I'll probably be making some waffles this weekend. If you want to get involved with some of the stuff that Anthony talked about and help donate some pizzas to people on the front lines, check out the information in the description below. There's also a link to his waffle recipe, which, I'm excited about. Thank you again. And if you want to get in touch with us, email us at gratuity@tastemade.com. We'll see you next time.